Thank you.
Good morning again. And welcome back to the second session, the public webinar for the Pacific Center for Island Security. Excuse me. And as I've mentioned before, this is jointly sponsored by the Pacific Center, as well as the Marx Center here at the University of Guam. Excuse me, please. At this point in time, we will now be moving into a presentation with Dr. Denghua Zhang, and I will introduce him via reading a little bit of his bio. Dr. Zhang is a senior fellow at the Department of Public Affairs, Australian National University. His research focuses on Chinese foreign policy, foreign aid, and China in the Pacific. He has more than 130 publications. His article, China's Motives, Influence, and Prospects in Pacific Island Countries, Views of Chinese Scholars, published by the International Relations of the Asian Pacific in 2023, has been promoted by the Oxford University Press as high-impact political science and international relations research. His article, China's Influence and Local Perceptions, The Case of Pacific Island Countries, won the Boyer Prize as the best article of Australian Journal of International Affairs for 2022. His book, A Cautious New Approach, China's Growing Trilateral Aid Cooperation, is amongst the ANU Press top 10 new releases for 2020. So this morning, we'll hear from Dr. Zhang, and his theme is China's view of geopolitical competition and the role of Micronesia. Welcome, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you so much to our host for having me here. It's a very good opportunity. Thank you. And I will try to speak for about 20 minutes so that we can have another 20 minutes for questions. And the topic of my presentation today is about the China-Pacific relationship, especially in the context of the great power competition. And also, we'll discuss briefly some of the implications for the Micronesia sub-region. So now the next slide, please. So next slide, please, Nolan. Yeah, thank you. So this slide here is about the competition between China and Taiwan. So when we talk about Pacific region, we need to talk about the diplomatic competition. This is also one of the main reasons why China has been so interested in these small island countries. And in particular, the Micronesia has now become the focus of the China-Taiwan diplomatic competition in this region. Yeah, and here you can see that in the table of these 14 sovereign states in the Pacific region, 3 countries really recognize Taiwan. And currently, Taiwan has 12 diplomatic partners. So this makes the Pacific region, especially the Micronesia sub-region, so important to not only to Taiwan, but also China. And we expect that this diplomatic competition between China and Taiwan will continue to intensify in the future. And this diplomatic competition between China and Taiwan is also getting more complicated because of the context of great power competition. For example, traditional powers, especially the United States, has been supportive of Taiwan. And it's quite interesting that in recent years, some of the countries that used to recognize Taiwan, they switched sides to Beijing. Countries like Solomon Islands or Kiribati and Nauru. And the Solomon Islands case is very interesting because Beijing has spent so much money and resources on Solomon Islands, trying to make it example to demonstrate to to all the Pacific Island countries, especially to those countries that still recognize Taiwan, that if they change sides, Beijing can provide a lot of economic and financial resources to the country. Yeah, if we have time, happy to discuss more about this fast-growing engagement between Solomon Islands and Taiwan after the switch in 2019. So next slide, please. And this slide and next slide is about the Chinese foreign aid. Yeah, when we talk about the Chinese diplomacy in the Pacific region, when we talk about the tools, what are the main ways for China to promote its influence in the region? I argue that foreign aid has been used by Beijing as a main tool in Chinese Pacific diplomacy. And as our next slide will show that China has already become one of the most important donors in the region. And in this slide, we have two photos, just to give you two examples of those China-funded foreign aid projects. And here, at least two, and these two, they represent a big Pacific Island country and a tiny Pacific Island country. So the photo here on the left is the China-funded, the National Sports Stadium in Solomon Islands. And this stadium is important because this is a costly project. This project itself and also some of those affiliated the facilities cost about around 113 million US dollars, and is funded with the Chinese grants, not loans. And this is one of the projects China committed to deliver when Solomon Islands government decided to change sides in 2019. And the photo on the right is just an example of the Chinese foreign aid to those tiny or smaller island countries in the region. And for example, this project is about the China-funded, the upgrading project of the roundabout road, the only main roundabout road in Niue. And again, it was funded with the Chinese grants. Next slide, please. And this slide is about the China as one of the most important donors in the region nowadays compared with traditional donors. And here we have two graphs. One is about the Chinese aid to the region based on the spent aid. That aid has been materialized. And we can see here, that's the graph on the left. We can see here that based on the spent aid, China is now the third largest donor in the region after Australia and the Asian Development Bank, ADB. But if we base this on the committed aid, the aid China has committed to the region instead of the aid spent in the region, China is now the second largest donor after Australia. But no matter whether we use the data on spent aid or the committed aid, we can argue that China has already become one of the most important donors in the region. And we can discuss more about the trend of the Chinese aid spending in the future. Thank you. Next slide, please. This slide is about some of the latest developments in relation to the China-Pacific relationship and also in relation to the Chinese foreign aid in the Pacific region. That is, since 2021, the Chinese government, they have established 6 new cooperation centers on the China-Pacific cooperation. And these 6 centers are important because they are now being used by China as one of the main platforms to promote the China-Pacific relationship. And as you can see here, they cover 6 different sectors, such as the emergency supplies, and also climate change, and poverty reduction, and then natural disaster, and also mushroom grass project. It's a very interesting project, and also agriculture. And you can also see those headquarters. And you can see that, they're talking, when we talk about the China-Pacific, the relationship, 4 provinces in China, they have been the most active ones promoting and also supporting Beijing's engagement with the Pacific region. They include in the Guangdong province, also they include Shandong province and the Fujian province, and also the Jiangsu province. And for the mushroom grass cooperation center, it is based in Fiji because currently China has already established the demonstration centers on mushroom grass project in Fiji and also in the Eastern Highlands province of Papua New Guinea. So the photo here, the small photo here on the right, is about the mushroom grass project in Fiji. This project is important not only because of this cooperation center, but also because of the trend in China's foreign aid nowadays, not only globally, but also in the Pacific region. That is, in addition to promote those large infrastructure projects, China is starting to do more small, they call it small but beautiful aid projects. So next slide, please. So can we move to the next slide? Thank you. This slide here is about an important aspect in relation to the Chinese foreign aid, that is the debt issue. Among Chinese foreign aids, they provide aid in grants, also aid in interest-free loans, and also the most important category is the concessional loans, or sometimes people call it soft loans. And the soft loans need to be repaid. And here we just have one example. That is, since the rise in Tonga in 2006, the Tongan government, they have borrowed about $70 million in Chinese concessional loans to fund the rebuilding of the capital city, Nuku'alofa. And then, as I said, concessional loans, they are loans. They need to be repaid. And it is, based on the current policy, Chinese foreign aid policy, it is extremely difficult for the Beijing to write off the concessional loans. It is more possible, but it is more possible for Beijing and the borrowing countries to negotiate about the loan extension. And that's exactly the case for Tonga. That is, in 2013 and 2018, the two governments, they initiated 2 5-year extensions. And now the Tongan government has started to repay the loans. But if you read the news, there have been a lot of the debates, a lot of discussions on this debt issue, or sometimes people will call it the debt trap, in relation to the Chinese foreign aid. Next slide, please. Thank you. So next slide. Thank you. Hi, Nolan. Can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. And talking about the geostrategic competition in the region, I think it is important also to discuss how do the local stakeholders in the Pacific region perceive the Chinese issue, perceive the Chinese engagement with the countries, and also perceive the Chinese influence. And I have done some research in recent years about the local perceptions. So here I'm just share with you some of those research findings. The main argument is that local perceptions of China issue, or China, including Chinese foreign aid in the Pacific region, they are quite nuanced. And here we have some more positive views or perceptions about the China issue. For example, the first is about a quotation from the report of the bipartisan task force appointed by Somaliland's Prime Minister Sugawari in 2019, before the government made the decision to switch from Taiwan to Beijing. And the main point here is that PRC, Beijing, they invested a lot in infrastructure development compared to the ROC, Republic of China, and Taiwan. So the Taiwan government or Solomon Islands government, they are keen to secure more support, more infrastructure support from Beijing. This is one of the main reasons for them to change the size. And that's exactly what China has been doing in recent years. Since the establishment of a diplomatic relationship, China has been doing a large number of those infrastructure projects in Solomon Islands nowadays. A second quote is about a recent controversial visit by Cook Islands Prime Minister Mark Brown to China in February this year. They said, our Prime Minister Mark Brown said our relationship and engagement with China complements rather than replace our long-standing relationship with New Zealand and our other bilateral or regional and multilateral partners. And the third one is the quote from our friend, Professor Transform Okoro, who is the Vice Chancellor at the Solomon Islands National University. And the main point here is that countries like Solomon Islands, Pacific countries like Solomon Islands, they should have the freedom to choose the new partners. So here, this slide is about some more positive views about the issue of China. And next slide, please. We're going to see some less rosy the perceptions about the China issue. So Nolan, can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you.
Sorry, there's just a little bit of a connection lag, Denghua. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's fine.
The slides are taking a while. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah. So this slide is about, this is based on one of my research projects. It's about some university students based in Fiji, from one major university in Fiji and another from one major university in Papua New Guinea. So I asked them these questions about their views. If they become the leaders in their country in the future, will they support more the investment in their country? You can say the majority of them will not welcome more Chinese investment. For view number two, do we welcome more Chinese foreign aid, more Chinese aid to a country if you become leaders? And again, less than half of those surveyed university students said they will welcome more Chinese foreign aid. View number three is about the migrants. This one is not surprising. Yeah, they said majority of them, the vast majority of those university students said they will not welcome more Chinese migrants to their country. And the view number four is about the Chinese government scholarship. This one is quite interesting because nowadays Chinese government is providing more the scholarships to the Pacific Island students. But you can see that less than half of those surveyed Fiji students said they will welcome more Chinese government scholarships, and slightly more than half in PNG said they will welcome more Chinese government scholarships. So here you can see that the university students, they have reservations about the China-Pacific engagement. So Nolan, can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this one is about the concept of time. I will talk very briefly about some of the points here. So this slide is here about just examples of the recent engagement between China and Micronesian countries, such as the visit by the Nauru president to China in March 2024 after the resumption of diplomatic relationship. And here is a joint statement between the two countries. And they said the two sides will expand their cooperation in a lot of sectors, such as trade, investment, infrastructure, agriculture, fisheries, and also environment protection. And the middle one is about the president of Federated States of Micronesia to Beijing in April last year. And here, and during meeting, the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, he said, this China-Pacific relationship is not targeted at certain countries, talking about the US and also the other traditional powers, and also should not be interfered with by any third party. And another point here is that in the Micronesia sub-region, Marshall Islands, Palau, they still recognize Taiwan. And China has been looking for opportunities to win over those countries that support Taiwan. Happy to discuss more. Next slide, please, Nolan. Thank you. And this is about Guam, some quotes, and especially from the Chinese Ministry of Defense. The first one is about the quote of the China Defense Ministry spokesperson talking about the U.S. military buildup in Micronesia, including in Guam. And he said the Guam security depends on what role the U.S. want Guam to play. And then the middle one is a quote from the China PLA newspaper talking about the U.S. again about the U.S. military buildup in Guam. And then the last one is about a quote of the U.S. Defense Secretary. Said any attack on Guam and the Northern Marianas will be met with a proper response. Again, he emphasized that these islands are the tip of American spear in the Pacific. The next slide, please. So, I promise this will be the last slide. That's about briefly. We can go through some of the implications for Micronesia, for Guam, and also the Pacific region. There are some of the observations based on my research. Firstly, that China will be here to stay, and China will not back down in the great power competition with the US and also the other traditional powers. The second point is related to the Chinese foreign aid. As I said, China will continue to focus on those large, fancy infrastructure projects. At the same time, China is starting to do more small but beautiful aid projects. A third point is that this one is quite interesting and to me it's quite important. It's about the capacity building in relation to the governance. That is, in recent years, China has become more, especially under Xi Jinping, the Chinese government has become more and more active in sharing the Chinese governance experience with the global South countries, including the Pacific Island states. And the next point is that, as you may know, that in recent years, China is seeking to expand the police cooperation with the Pacific Island countries, with countries such as Solomon Islands, such as Kiribati and Vanuatu. They are also looking for opportunities with other Pacific Island countries. And next point is about the China-Pacific military engagement. At this stage, we can argue that their military ambition in the region might still be limited, but it's likely to grow, especially in the context of the US-China competition. And the last 2 points, one is about that the Pacific Island countries, including Micronesia countries, need to take sides. I think people have different views on this. And currently we can see that most of the Pacific Island countries, if they can, they prefer to balance their relationship with both sides, traditional powers and China, so that they can have more support from the two types of the partner countries. And talking about the impact of Micronesia and Guam, I think if the US and China, if the competition between US and China intensify to a certain point, that the two countries go to the two superpowers, they go to war, what will happen in this Pacific region, and especially in this Micronesia region? I think happy to discuss more. I think some of you have more insights to share with us. And concept of time, I will stop here. And thank you so much for this opportunity again. And happy to take questions and also take comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for a very interesting and sobering presentation. Sometimes we hear this conversation and sometimes people sort of mince words and don't say exactly what they mean, but you said exactly what you saw, and very much appreciate that opportunity. So the floor is open to questions, and we also may have some questions on Zoom from some of the people who are viewing it. So just the general direction of Chinese assistance, Chinese aid in relationship to the entire Pacific, which you now have outlined has gone a little bit beyond ADB and is now poised next to Australia. So the U.S. Assistance in that regard has been relatively flat during that whole time period, and will probably be even more flat for the foreseeable future. What is it that you think will happen in the future in terms of Chinese assistance? Do you think China will see an opportunity to increase this kind of assistance? Is the U.S. sort of leaving the field?
Sure. Thank you for this important question. And I think let me clarify that when we talk about the growing foreign aid in the Pacific region, the general context is that Chinese foreign aid to the other regions had also been growing, and especially to countries like Africa and Asia. And these two regions, Africa and Asia, they receive about half and also 1/3 of the Chinese foreign aid in total, respectively. And the Chinese foreign aid to the Pacific region, especially to those countries that recognize Beijing, is around 4% in total. Yeah, so this is point number one. The second is that in relation to the US, let's say the US withdrawal or potential withdrawal of the foreign aid to the Pacific region. My observation is that, and also my argument is that China has been looking for opportunities to increase their influence in the Pacific region, including in those Micronesia countries. So we can hardly tell to what extent China will increase their foreign aid. But my main argument is that China will continue to maintain and, if possible, increase their foreign aid to these regions. I think we will have more information today and tomorrow, because starting from today, the China and the Pacific Island countries, they are having their third foreign ministers meeting. This is a new mechanism established by China during the COVID time. And today and tomorrow, they are having their third foreign ministers meeting. And that's in Chinese, the Fujian province, one of the 4 provinces I've mentioned. So similar to those previous two, the foreign minister meetings, after this meeting, we can see more announcements from China on how they are going to promote the China-Pacific relationship, including the Chinese foreign aid to the region in the near future. So we have a clearer picture after tomorrow. And but at the same time, there could be uncertainties in Chinese foreign aid programs globally and also in the Pacific region. This is because of the Chinese economic slowdown at home. Yeah, the Chinese economy faces a lot of challenges at home, structural challenges, and so we are still not that sure how this type of uncertainty will affect the Chinese foreign aid spending. Yeah. So I think we can wait and see we can wait for, let's say, for some time before we can have a clear picture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from previous panelist, Dr. Gonzaga. So, Zag, you have your hand up, and would you like to ask a question?
So I can see the next, hi Zach, good to see you here. And I can see a question here. Do you think China has reached its limits in Micronesia as most territorial regions? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for these questions. Yeah, I did some research in recent years about the US China competition in this Micronesia sub-region. And I also had the opportunity to talk to some of those really knowledgeable experts on the region. And I think it is, for your question, maybe we can say yes, China has reached their limits in Micronesia sub-region compared with the other regions. Yeah, given this special relationship of these Micronesia countries and territories, special relationship with the US. And we can see that currently the Chinese influence in this region, including with FSM and Kiribati and Nauru, are more limited to the economic sector and also the foreign aid sector. That is, China has been doing more infrastructure projects. In terms of the security, because the US has a veto in this area, I do not think China has the possibility to increase their influence. But as I have mentioned during the presentation, the Chinese President Xi Jinping said China FSM relationship is not targeted at the US or any other third party, and the FSM should have freedom to choose their development partner. So
okay,
yes,
we have a couple of questions from the Zoom. Ken, you want to read those questions?
Sure. And the first question from Jenna, is there a significance of cooperation centers?
Yes.
Yeah. So Jenna asked, hey,
yes,
good to
sure.
see you.
Yeah.
This if there's a significance of the cooperation centers being established in different provinces in China.
Exactly. Sure.
Specific islands.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for this important question. I did some research a few years ago on this. And in recent years, the Chinese universities, they have established eight Pacific Islands or Oceania research centers in China. And most of these, this Pacific, this is about the cooperation center. Yes, this cooperation center, they have been established in these four provinces. The main reason is that Beijing needs these four provinces to continue to support the Beijing's engagement with the island countries. And the Solomon Islands actually is a good example, as I mentioned earlier, since the switch in 2019. These four provinces in China, including Fujian, Guangdong, or Shandong province, or Jiangsu province, they have been promoting their engagement with the Solomon Islands government and also with Solomon Islands provinces on almost all fronts, such as aid, such as establishing establishing the sister-city relationship. Yeah, there have been a lot in recent years.
Okay, we have another question, and I'll let Dr. Cooper read it because I know you can see the question, but the viewers can't.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Another question for you, Denghua, was you referenced that China will be more active in sharing its governance experience of the Pacific states. In your view, how will China conduct such activities? Will these activities, in your view, include supporting further self-governance for territories like Guam? That's a question from the audience.
Sure, thank you. I think for the second part of the question, I think China will be given the special relationship of Guam and the U.S. territories with Washington D.C., I think China will be careful, despite the geopolitical competition. Sorry, what was the first part of the question? I forgot. Ken?
The first part was, how do you view China conducting the activities regarding sharing governance experience with Pacific states?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So these capacity building programs, they are part of the Chinese foreign aid projects, and actually they include two parts. One is those formal tertiary education opportunities that is China provide the government scholarships to Pacific Island students to study at Chinese universities for a formal degree. 4 years for bachelor, 3 years for a master's, and then I think should be for 4 years for a PhD. This is the formal the tertiary education opportunities. They also covers capacity the governance, because for these students they can choose different aspects, different disciplines to study in China. And then the second main type of those capacity training programs mainly targets on those the public servants or those the senior professionals in Pacific Island countries, and they will have a short term. That is, China will run a training a workshop or training session either in China or in the Pacific Island countries for ranging from a few weeks to a few months. And again, they cover different aspects such as capacity building, such as tax, and also the agriculture, fishery, and even anti-corruption. They will add, and also the policing. And one example is that I was since the switch of diplomatic relationship from Taiwan to China by Somaliland's government, nearly every month there will be a delegation from Somaliland's the ministry to China for this type of capacity building programs. I'm sure that this type of capacity building program, especially in relation to the governance issue, how to govern a country, will have the long-term impact on those Pacific Island countries, because they can affect the mindset of the recipients of the Chinese either Chinese government scholarships or this type of the short-term training opportunities. It's quite interesting. For example, in recent years, Somaliland governments, the police force, they send senior delegations to receive training at the Chinese policing academy. At the same time, they send another senior group to Australia for the similar policing the capacity building programs. So I'm sure once these two groups of students they graduate or they finish their training at Australia and China, I think I'm not sure how this will affect their daily work. For example, how to respond to a riot in a city. I think based on their trainings into the two different countries, they have different experience to share. So this type of the capacity building programs, they can have long-term impact on the mindset of the recipients.
Okay, we have 2 more questions to go, and we'll start with our advisory council member, Dr. Tarcisius. Go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, Denghua.
Good to see you again.
I have a question, and a lot of your talk focuses on the Chinese state and provinces, the role of the provinces. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of Chinese companies. And we see that they are often at the forefront. A lot of diplomatic relations building in Solomon Islands, even in Nauru, and increasingly in places.
Sure.
And given Micronesia, particularly the COFA countries' relationship with the U.S., Perhaps there is a role for Chinese companies, and we've seen it with the flagships in the Marshall Islands. We've seen it with proposals for investment in the app and FSM because of its relationship with China. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the role of Chinese companies in both framing, building, and sustaining Chinese relationship with the Pacific.
Sure, thank you. Sure, thank you, Tara, for this really important question. I think they're seeing in Beijing, especially under Xi Jinping, that the party controls everything, and this, of course, includes the Chinese companies. Yeah, but when we talk about the general point is that the Chinese companies they can play an important role in Chinese global outreach, including the Pacific Islands. Yeah, but to simplify, there are two types of the Chinese companies in the Pacific region. One is those private small businesses. Yeah, people who come from, for example, come from those rural areas in one of the four provinces I've mentioned, especially from Fujian province. They are looking for economic opportunities to make money. And they come to the Pacific region to set up those retail shops. And for this type of the retailers or small businesses, their relationship with Beijing is quite limited. And the only exception is that they need to go to the Chinese embassy to renew their passport, and also sometimes some other travel documents. And for the majority of the Chinese diaspora, I'm talking about the small business people, their relationship with the Chinese embassy, with the Chinese government, could be quite limited. But for a handful of those elites, of those the Chinese associations, as you may know, in almost every country, the Chinese diaspora they will form like association, the Chinese association, and those elites they could have more direct links to Chinese embassy and to the province governments and to Beijing. Yeah, they can be part of the Chinese United Front. And in the end, the second main type of the Chinese companies are those state-owned or provincial government-owned or city government-owned the companies. For these companies, they have strong connections to the government. Yeah, and they also receive benefits because they can, compared with the other parties, they can either receive funding support from the Chinese government. And for the state-owned enterprises, they can play a much more important role compared with private companies in supporting the Chinese official relationship with the island countries. Companies such as CCECC or the China Rail or the China Harbor or the Guangdong for construction. Yeah, I forgot the exact name of the company. They can play, and they have played an important role in supporting the Beijing's official relationship with the region. And this also covers also covers Chinese efforts to increase their influence in countries that still recognize Taiwan. Yeah, because in Chinese political culture, they have a term that we should use the economic ties to promote the political relationship. Yeah, and so in practice, Beijing can encourage those Chinese companies, the big Chinese companies or influential business people to expand their links in those countries, in countries such as Palau or Marshall Islands, to expand their links, commercial links, and also to expand their networks with those elites in these countries, such as those retired senior officials or former presidents of these countries, hoping that in the future this can pave the way for, let's say, for a potential breakthrough of the diplomatic or political relationship between China and these countries. And this is either practiced not only in the Pacific region, but also elsewhere. Yeah, so I will stop here.
Okay, and our last question is from Dr. Isa Ariola.
Hi, Dr. Zhang. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm Isa from Saipan. I noticed it's really good to get a more balanced perspective about aid in the region, just in general. So thank you. I noticed you mentioned Chinese aid is growing in general, not just in the region, right? You mentioned that.
Yeah.
But there are so many, and this is probably because I'm from Saipan and I get so much of this media coming through in the CNMI, but there's so many assumptions that are made about Chinese investments in the region. So my question to you is, how does this increase in spending align, if at all, with any kind of threat to either Micronesian sovereignty or I guess the threat of Chinese hegemony in the region? Would you have anything to say about that?
Thank you. Very interesting, but also very, very relevant and significant question. I think, let me answer your question this way. I think that is, you mentioned that China has been increasing its foreign aid, and also let's say the number of the Chinese tourists to places like Saipan or to some of the Pacific countries has also increased, and also let's say the Chinese diaspora. I think there are different levels of the engagement. Some of them could be more supported by or more encouraged by Beijing, and some others are, as I said, maybe are not related to Beijing. For example, those small business people looking for economic opportunity overseas, and I think the impact of the Chinese engagement could be very, let's say, diversified or nuanced. There are some benefits and also there are also some challenges to the Pacific Island countries. I can happy to give you some short examples. I think one of the benefits for the Pacific Island countries might be the increased spending on infrastructure. And of course, people can see there are also, even in terms of infrastructure, there are also some issues with the Chinese infrastructure projects, such as quality issues and also the long issues. But I think the Pacific Island countries, many Pacific Island countries, they do need the growing support in the sector of infrastructure. And this is also, I think, one of the main reasons why these Pacific Island leaders, they are willing to engage with China. They are seeing China as an important partner in this sector of infrastructure. And I think the second benefit is a bit tricky because of the growing geopolitical competition. I think all external powers, including China and traditional partners, they are trying to increase their spending in this region. I think this provides opportunities for not only those financial, more tangible opportunities for the Pacific Island countries, but also they provide an opportunity for the Pacific Island countries to leverage. Yeah. And then some of the challenges. One of the challenges I've mentioned during the presentation is the debt issue for those small and fragile island countries. Yeah, if they borrow heavily from China, whether the commercial loans or concession loans, I think they need to be aware. They need to be clear that the loans need to be repaid. I'm not talking about interest-free loans. Interest-free loans can be written off as part of the Chinese foreign aid. But for concessional loans based on the current Chinese policy, it's extremely unlikely to be cancelled. So the Pacific Island governments, I think they need to bear in mind that the loans need to be repaid. Yeah, and also during my research projects in recent years, I I interviewed and also surveyed a good number of those non-government organizations, civil society groups in countries like Fiji, PNG, and Tonga. Many of these NGOs raise the issue about environmental impact. And also during my engagement with those university students, some of them mentioned the issue about the sovereignty issues. Yeah, so the general point is that opportunities and challenges. There are opportunities and challenges in relation to China's engagement, and also in terms of the impact on the whole region. Just to simplify, yeah. So I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zhang. And thank you for those questions and answers.